My name is Sarah Jensen. I'm 26 years old, and I'm a product lead at a thriving tech startup. But exactly a year ago, when I was 25, I heard words that felt like a definitive period at the end of my career sentence. I was sitting in David Thorne's office, the man who had been my mentor, my boss, and, I'd thought, my biggest advocate. The late afternoon sun slanted through his window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air, and for a moment, everything felt suspended. I'd just told him I was considering an offer from a smaller, riskier company. He leaned back in his leather chair, a faint, almost pitying smile on his face, and said, "Sarah, you know, some people, they hit their stride early. Peak at 25. And that's okay. You've had a great run." The air left my lungs. My first instinct was to argue, to list every achievement, every late night, every success I'd brought to his department. But the words caught in my throat. His tone wasn't accusatory, it was almost gentle, as if he were delivering an unfortunate medical diagnosis. I just nodded, a tight, controlled movement, and mumbled something about needing to think. I walked out of his office that day feeling like a deflated balloon, but what he didn't know, what no one knew yet, was that his casual dismissal would be the very fuel that would lead me to make $2 million before my 27th birthday. To understand why David's words cut so deep, you need to know our history. I met David when I was 22, fresh out of college with a degree in business analytics and a burning ambition. He was the VP of product at Sterling Tech, a well-established software company, and he took me under his wing. He saw potential in me, he said, a sharp eye for market trends and a relentless work ethic. For 3 years, I absorbed everything he taught me, working my way up from junior analyst to product manager. I admired him greatly. He had a way of making you feel like you were part of something important, part of his vision. I thrived under his guidance. I spearheaded the launch of Sterling's new data visualization tool, which became a significant revenue driver. I rebuilt our customer feedback loop, increasing engagement by 40%. My succulent, a small, hardy echeveria I named Resilience, sat on my desk, a silent testament to my ability to grow even in the often dry corporate environment. David would sometimes glance at it, remarking, "Still watering that thing? You know, some plants just take up too much mental real estate." I always just smiled, knowing it was more than just a plant to me. But as my successes mounted, a subtle shift began in David. It started small, almost imperceptible. In team meetings, he'd subtly redirect praise for my ideas, framing them as extensions of his own strategy. He'd often say, "Sarah really executed on our vision for this, even when the vision had been primarily mine." I brushed it off, telling myself it was just how senior leaders operated, giving credit broadly. Then came the incident with the Synergy project. I had spent months developing a proposal for a new AI-driven recommendation engine, meticulously detailing the market opportunity and technical requirements. I presented it to David, full of excitement. He listened, nodding, then tabled it for weeks. Later, in a senior leadership meeting, he presented a nearly identical concept, rebranded as Project Horizon, as his own brainchild. He gave me a brief, almost apologetic nod from across the room when I caught his eye. When I confronted him afterward, he patted my shoulder. "Sarah, you're good, really good. But sometimes you need a senior voice to give an idea the gravitas it needs to get off the ground. Think of it as a collaborative effort." My stomach churned, but I swallowed my protest. I wanted to believe he was still on my side, that he was still mentoring me. The pattern continued. He'd assign me to less visible projects, claiming they were development opportunities, while giving the high-profile, innovative work to others. My ideas were always too ambitious or not quite ready for prime time when I proposed them, but remarkably similar concepts would later emerge from his department, often with his name prominently attached. The echeveria on my desk, once a symbol of quiet growth, started to feel like a quiet witness to a slow drain of my energy. This all culminated on my 25th birthday. I was feeling a mix of accomplishment and restlessness. I'd just been approached by a former colleague about joining a very early-stage startup called Ascend, focused on personalized learning platforms. It was a huge leap of faith, a tiny team, and a high-risk, high-reward scenario. I went to David, not for permission, but for advice, hoping for a genuine conversation. That's when he delivered his "peaked at 25" line. His words, delivered with such practiced benevolence, finally shattered the illusion. It wasn't about mentoring me, it was about managing my ambition, keeping me in a box where I wouldn't overshadow him. He wasn't trying to help me avoid a mistake, he was trying to ensure I stayed exactly where he thought I belonged. The quiet, controlled nod I gave him in his office was my silent decision. I would not just leave Sterling Tech, I would prove him profoundly wrong. The next morning, I emailed David my resignation, citing the opportunity at Ascend. His reply was swift, a brief message wishing me luck and reiterating that the startup world was a tough grind, especially for someone who'd already seen a lot of success early on. He clearly believed I was making a mistake. I packed up my desk, carefully placing my echeverria into a small box. As I carried it out, I saw David watching me from his office door, a faint, unreadable expression on his face. Joining Ascend was a whirlwind. We were a team of 5, operating out of a cramped co-working space, fueled by instant coffee and a fierce belief in our product. My role as product lead was encompassing. I was involved in everything from user research and feature development to marketing strategy and investor pitches. There was no one to subtly undermine me, no one to steal my ideas. Every success, every failure, was squarely mine and the team's. I poured every ounce of my energy into Ascend. We were building a platform that used adaptive AI to tailor educational content to individual learning styles, something I deeply believed in. I led the development of our core algorithm, working closely with the engineers, and then spearheaded the pilot program rollout to a network of private schools. The feedback was overwhelmingly positive. I was constantly learning, constantly challenged, and constantly pushing my own boundaries. My echeverria sat on the windowsill of our tiny office, soaking up the light, a reminder of the quiet resilience I needed to cultivate. One evening, about 6 months into my time at Ascend, I was reviewing our financial projections with our CEO, Mark. We were preparing for our series of funding round. He pointed to a line item, my equity stake. "Sarah," he said, "you came in early, took a big risk. If we hit our valuation targets, your shares are going to be worth a significant amount." He explained the potential payout if we were acquired or had a successful IPO. It was a number that made my breath catch. The next few months were a blur of intense work. We secured our Series A, raising $10 million, which allowed us to scale rapidly. I led the expansion into the public school sector, navigating complex regulatory hurdles and forging key partnerships. We were gaining serious traction, attracting attention from larger edtech companies. I was working 16-hour days, fueled by a purpose David had tried to extinguish. Then, just a few weeks after my 26th birthday, the news broke. Ascend was being acquired by LearnSmart, a major player in the educational technology space, for a staggering sum. The acquisition was announced publicly, and the terms included significant payouts for early employees and founders based on their equity. I received an email from our legal team with the details of my share distribution. I opened it with shaking hands. The number on the page was clear, $2,135,000. I had made over $2 million. At 26. I stared at the screen, a quiet, almost disbelieving smile spreading across my face. It wasn't about proving David wrong, not entirely. It was about proving myself right. About trusting my instincts, my ambition, and my ability to build something meaningful. The money was a concrete validation, a tangible representation of the value I had created. The news spread quickly in our industry. I started receiving congratulatory messages from former colleagues, some of whom still worked at Sterling Tech. One afternoon, I got a text from a mutual connection, asking if I'd heard from David. "He's apparently been pretty quiet since the Ascend news," the text read. "Everyone's talking about it." I hadn't heard from him directly, and I wasn't surprised. The silence spoke volumes. A few weeks later, after the acquisition was finalized and the funds had been transferred, I received a LinkedIn message from David. It was brief, almost perfunctory. "Sarah, congratulations on your success at Ascend. Remarkable growth. Always knew you had it in you." The words felt hollow, a forced rewrite of history. I didn't reply. There was no need. His opinion no longer held any power over me. I still work at Ascend, now as a product director within LearnSmart, leading an even larger team. The Echevarria, Resilience, sits on my new, expansive desk in my home office, thriving. It's bigger now, with several new offshoots, its leaves a vibrant green. It reminds me that growth isn't always linear, and sometimes, the most potent fertilizer comes from unexpected places.